What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So the NCAA tournament is finally here and round one kicks off on Thursday. So I'm here to give my bracket predictions going into this year's tournament. I'm going to go through each region, get to my final four for each region, and then go through the final four and crown my national champion coming up at the end of this. So anyway, we're going to hop right into it. But before we do jump in, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there. We have more college basketball content on the channel, and we will throughout this whole NCAA tournament. So let's just jump right in. We're going to jump into the South region, obviously, starting at the top with the 1-16 matchup, Auburn versus Alabama State. And Auburn don't really see any trouble here round one. I really don't see any of the 1 seeds struggling round one this year with any of the 16 seeds. So I got Auburn moving on there. Next up, Louisville Creighton. Very interesting one. Louisville 19 on Bart Torvik, Creighton number 33 currently, but Louisville top 25 offense and defense. One of the best 2-point shooting teams in the country as well. Plus, the game is being played in Lexington, 70-something miles from Louisville's campus. So I got Louisville also feeling a little bit disrespected for being an 8 seed when they are arguably the second best ACC team. You can make that argument. So I got Louisville moving on in this one. Now, UC San Diego is the 12 seed that everyone is staring at in this 5-12 matchup as an upset. They're coming in on a roll. 45th overall on Torvik. Tough defense. They don't turn it over a lot. They force 16 turnovers a game, which is something that school down the road struggles with. 14 a game. Size could be a problem for UC San Diego. Only 3 players 6'8" or taller. They have one 6'10" guy on the roster, but I think they can create enough turnovers from the guards to make this the upset people think that it could be. But the size issue definitely does give me pause for this one, and I'm going to stick with UC San Diego and the popular pick right here. But I wouldn't be surprised if the size is a big factor and too big of a factor to overcome in this one. That school down the road is favored only by 2.5 in this 5-12 matchup. So, but they have just got hot after winning the Big Ten tournament last weekend. So I think this will definitely be one of the best games on Thursday. And it's one of the last games on Thursday, tipping off at 10 o'clock. So that's definitely one to watch out for, but I'll stick with UC San Diego currently. Now, Texas A&M in the 4-13 matchup with Yale. And Texas A&M is the 11th best defense in the country currently. Yale is a top 10 3-point shooting team. Yale hung tough with Purdue in November. Same with Minnesota. Now, this is one that I have kind of completely flipped my script on. I have been going with Texas A&M in every single bracket that I've made so far. I think I've maybe picked Yale once or twice. But I kind of have a new theory that I'm working on this year. And who knows? These theories are always, I'm sure my bracket will be busted the second game into this tournament, like it is every year. But I'm kind of working on something to look at here is the first day when you have, NCAA tournament, obviously, you have Thursday, Friday, then you have Saturday, Sunday. So in the first games, I'm going with teams, when you kind of think about in history, what are the teams that usually upset teams in round one? As a Michigan State fan, I hate looking back at this, but you look at the 2-15 matchup back in 2016 against Middle Tennessee. What did they do? Shot an incredible amount of threes at an incredible percentage. So I'm looking at good 3-point shooting teams day one, and then for the second game in a weekend, I'm looking for strong defensive teams, defensive battles when you're playing your second game in 3 days. So I'm actually flipping my pick here to Yale to beat Texas A&M in this one. And then we go down to Ole Miss versus North Carolina. North Carolina winning the play-in game and getting the 11th seed here. UNC is actually favored as the 11th seed here. But I think Ole Miss, some good performances last couple weeks, getting back to where they were at the beginning of the year when they beat teams like BYU, had a tough 2-point loss to Purdue. They beat Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, close loss to Auburn as well, and competed well in a tough SEC. I think, don't get me wrong, I could very well see a world where North Carolina wins this game and, possibly even makes a second weekend here in this pod. But I think Ole Miss will be a little too much in this one, and possibly a little bit of North Carolina maybe getting a little too comfortable, feeling the disrespect that they shouldn't get in. Had an incredible performance. I mean, we're up 40 at one point in the play-in game, and then getting to this game that see themselves favored going into this game. I'm going to go with Ole Miss in this one to advance. Next up, Iowa State, Lipscomb. And Iowa State, without their star guard, Keyshawn Gilbert, second leading scorer and assist leader on the team. But I don't see much resistance here. Lipscomb, 101 on Torvik. Bart Torvik currently barely a top 100 offense and 125th on defense with an offensive rating rank of 330. So I got Iowa State moving on here, even with the injury to one of their best players. And you move down to Michigan State's little pod here. Marquette versus New Mexico in the 7-10 matchup. And Marquette, tough defense. Only 69 points per game allowed, forcing 15 turnovers. New Mexico got a player in Donovan Dent, 21 points a game, 6 assists, 1.5 steals a game. They have a center, Nelly Jr. Joseph, 14 and 11, something to watch out for. But my eyes go to Cam Jones for Marquette. He leads them with 19 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists on the year, and he has a little more help around him as well than, say, Donovan Dent does at New Mexico. But I think this could definitely be an interesting game should Dent get hot and go off. But I really want to pick New Mexico in this spot, but I think I'm going to stick with Marquette here. And Michigan State Bryant, we will have a full preview for this game up on the channel here before Friday. But obviously we know the story here for Michigan State. 13th on Bart Torvik currently, 8th in the polls, a 2 seed. They have a 5th ranked defense. Bryant, 153rd on Torvik, 190th offense, and 152nd on defense. Rafael Pinzon and Earl Timberlake are good players for them. 2 6'6" guards. They average 82 points a game as a team. They can cause some problems for Michigan State, but I think at the end of the day, I think this will be a matchup that with 2 bigger guards, Bryant will be able to hang around and make this a game, close game, but MSU able to make enough plays to advance in this one. And this one, 18.5 point spread. I think it could be a little bit closer than that given their size and scoring ability at the guard position. Moving on to the round of 32 in this one, Auburn versus Louisville. I think this could get an interesting game. Being played very close to Louisville's campus, and Auburn has looked gettable the last couple weeks, but I don't think this is the one. So I got Auburn moving on to the Sweet 16, UC San Diego, and as I said, now I switched it. I'm even switching it from my notes. That's how crazy this thing is. UC San Diego and Yale. Think this was definitely an interesting one here. Definitely a toss-up game. I mean, a 12-13 matchup for a spot in the Sweet 16. I am going to go with Yale in this one, advancing to the Sweet 16. And then we go down to Marquette versus Michigan State. Potential rematch from a couple years ago. Round of 32 matchup. I like Michigan State's guard depth here that they can throw at Cam Jones in this one. So I got Michigan State moving on to the Sweet 16. Then a potential Sweet 16. We have Auburn versus Yale. And this is one that I actually had if A&M was still in at this point. I kind of like A&M to test Auburn in this matchup. And Texas A&M is a team that just beat Auburn about 2 weeks ago. So I think that could have definitely been an interesting match. But given that I switched my bracket here on the fly, I believe Auburn advances to the Elite Eight. And I was actually going to pick Auburn even if it was A&M, but I think it could have been a little bit closer of a game. Now, Michigan State versus Ole Miss, a coaching rematch from the 2019 Final Four. Would be a tough matchup for Michigan State, no doubt. And one, I wouldn't be surprised here if Ole Miss won. But I think Michigan State's defense is the key to watch here that will get them to an Elite Eight. And setting up an Elite Eight that a lot of people have currently. It's Auburn, it's Michigan State. And this is one of the classics that I think, one of the Michigan State classics that defensive-wise they like to do. And I think Broome will definitely get his, but for Michigan State, it's going to be, can you shut off the water for Auburn's other players? Like holding Baker Mazzara, Miles Kelly, Pettiford under 10, 12 points, but if Broome goes off for, say, 28, I think Michigan State's fine with that as long as they can make a few shots. If they can hit around that 7 3-pointer mark, like if you've watched any of our Michigan State previews recaps, we talk about they can hit around 7 or so 3-pointers, stay in 8 to 12 3-point range or turnover range, and then hold the other players outside of Johni Broome in check for the most part. I think this is a game Michigan State will win and get to the Final Four. Heading over to the East region, Duke, I don't think has a problem with now. Mount St. Mary's has won that playing game at 16. Mississippi State and Baylor. Baylor's a team I had in the Final Four at the beginning of the year. Definitely underperformed. I think Baylor has more NBA guys, though, and outside of Josh Hubbard, what are you getting from them? That was Michigan State's first-round matchup last year. Mississippi State is actually favored by 1.5 going into this one. But I'm going to stick with Baylor. Moving on to the second round. Oregon Liberty. Liberty is 56th on Torvik currently. 5th best three-point shooting team. If they can hit threes in this one, they're a top 50 defense. I don't mind a Liberty upset here. Shellstad and Biddle, obviously, though. Tough duo and a tough team in Oregon. Michigan State, we just saw them, twice over the last, month and a half. And I could see them easily winning a game here. But the three-point shooting in the first round of the tournament, watch out for. Kind of the new theory I'm working on, going with the three-point shooting team early on the first game, and then going with the defensive team on the second day of a weekend. So three-point shooting in round 1, defense in the round of 32. I'm going to go with Liberty in this one, where Oregon, I think if they get past this one, they have a really good shot of making a Sweet 16. But I got Liberty moving on here. Next up, 4-13, Arizona-Akron. Akron is a fast team and love to block shots. Score 85 points a game. I think this is a scary game for Arizona. They're favored by 14.5 right now. I think it's going to be closer than that. But Arizona can score with the best of them as well. 82 points a game. Solid-ish defense, 72 points a game. But I think this will be one of the higher scoring games of the first round, though. And I think Caleb Love makes enough plays down the stretch. But, man, I think this is a close one and came very close to picking Akron. But then you also look at it, too, and you kind of start questioning yourself. I'm like, am I really going to have two 12-13 matchups? And that's not the only reason I'm picking this. I'm picking this because I believe Caleb Love will make too many plays in this one. But that's where I'm at right now. I got Arizona moving on to the round of 32. BYU, VCU. 14 for BYU on Torvik, 29 for VCU. BYU, 7th best offense, 25th best defense for VCU. So, really conflicting styles here. Really good offense in BYU, really tough defense in VCU. But I'm sticking with my philosophy, though, for day one of the tournament, three-point shooting and offense. I'm going with BYU. Wisconsin and Montana, I think too much Tanji. Montana's 235th in adjusted efficiency defense. Give me Wisconsin, favored by 16.5 in this one. St. Mary's versus Vanderbilt, 7-10 matchup. St. Mary's top 10 defense, Vanderbilt top 25 offense. And I think this might be a toss-up game as it gets, as big of a toss-up game, should I say, as it gets in this region. But I'll lean with A.J. Hoggard and Vandy. Don't love it in this one, but I think A.J. Hoggard and Vanderbilt gets this one in the 7-10 matchup, advancing to the round of 32. Alabama, Robert Morris. There is a Grant Nelson injury for Alabama. Don't know, obviously, if he's going to play. Definitely could be big long-term if he is out for some time. But in this one, if Alabama's healthy, I think even if Grant Nelson doesn't play in this one, I mean, they're still favored by 23.5. Obviously, you hope Grant Nelson is back. But in this particular game, I don't think that matters too much in this one. 158th adjusted efficiency offense and 144th adjusted efficiency defense for Robert Morris. So give me Alabama moving on. Now, Duke Baylor. Storylines galore with Jeremy Roach, obviously in this one, playing his old team. Is Coop 100%? Really, you can say that for the first round game and this one. But really, once you get into second game and on, is Coop 100% for Duke? You obviously hope so. But I think either way, they got enough guys in this matchup that I think Baylor could hang around with these guys, hang tough for a while with, VJ Edcombe, Jeremy Roach, O'Meara. But I think Duke gets by in the end. Liberty, Arizona. Arizona in this one, Caleb Love just makes too many plays, but I think this is definitely one to watch for Liberty, as we talked about, with their offense and a pretty decent defense, top 50 defense. So one to watch out for, but I'll take Arizona moving on in this one. BYU, Wisconsin, very intriguing, very fun matchup that this could be and could set up for a very high-scoring game again. But I trust Wisconsin's defense a little more to move on, as we said, second day of a weekend. Vanderbilt versus Alabama. I think this one could be closer with the Grant Nelson injury if he's not in there. 16-point win earlier in the season for Alabama. But you still have Mark Sears out there for Alabama. I think Alabama gets it done in this one to move on to the Sweet 16. Duke and Arizona. Caleb Love facing Duke again. 14-point loss in November for Arizona. As long as Coop is in this game, though, I don't think they will lose this one. But I definitely even think with him in the game, Arizona will make this a game. But I got Duke moving on. Alabama and Wisconsin. This is where the injury could bite Alabama if Grant Nelson isn't in here. And if he's not back, Tanji is an incredible player. Mark Sears, two offensive-oriented teams as well. Alabama was my national champion pick beginning of the year, but this is a tough Wisconsin team. I'd give the slight edge with the injury unknown currently for Alabama to their second leading scorer in Grant Nelson. Giving the slight edge to Wisconsin. Set up a rematch from the Final Four about a decade ago. Duke versus Wisconsin. I got Duke. I just think it'll be too much. Blackwell for Wisconsin will have to step up. Others will have to step up. Crowell for Wisconsin to help Tanji in this one. But I like Duke to get to the Final Four. In the Midwest, Houston, SIU, Edwardsville, favored by 28.5 for a reason in this one. Houston moves on. Gonzaga, Georgia. I think this is interesting. Zag's number 11 on Torvik currently. Top 15 offense, top 30 defense. Georgia has a top 25 defense. But give me Ryan Nembhard and the Zags. Clemson and McNeese. Clemson, top 25 offense and defense. McNeese, a good three-point shooting team. Clemson, too balanced, though. Top 26 offense and defense. But only projected around a 7-point game currently. 7.5 Clemson is favored by right now. But I'm going to go with Clemson in this one. Purdue, high point. Now, this is another popular upset pick here. But Purdue, we know the story this season. They have the best point guard in the country in Braden Smith. Trey Kaufman-Redd is amazing down low. 8th rated offense, 67th ranked defense, but they are 151st in points allowed. High Point is a top 30 rated offense, 213th on defense. Now, 82 points a game for High Point, definitely potential for an upset here, and I think the two best players on the floor with Purdue can find a way to escape this one. Illinois versus Xavier, Texas. We're recording this as that game is going on right now. I think Illinois will win this matchup either way, so that's why we went ahead and recorded right now. So we'll move on to Kentucky versus Troy. Kentucky's second leading scorer on the year. Jackson Robinson is out for the season. Troy, good 2-point defense, but I think Kentucky has too much here for Troy to get past them. So I'll give Kentucky moving on to the round of 32. UCLA versus Utah State. This one could be interesting as Utah State is a top 15 offense, but UCLA forced enough turnovers to avoid the 7-10 upset in this one. Tennessee, Wofford. I don't think much trouble here. Wofford, 144th on Torvik currently. But Houston, Gonzaga. Now, this is a big matchup, and I actually like Gonzaga in this one. Ryan Nembhard, I think, is the big difference here. For Gonzaga, to move on, we head to Clemson versus Purdue. Clemson, I think the more balanced team in this one. Braden could go insane. So could Trey Kaufman-Renn. But I think Clemson is who I'm going to go with here to move on to face Gonzaga. Now, Illinois, Kentucky, I think this will be a really fun, interesting game. But I think Illinois, with an up and down year, for both of these teams, really, you can say. But I'm going to go with Illinois in this one. UCLA, Tennessee. Tennessee's defense, too good. Give me Tennessee to move on. Then Zags versus Clemson. I'm going to go with Clemson. Moving on here to the Elite Eight. And then you set up Illinois, Tennessee. I think it's a tight one. But Tennessee sweeps Illinois on the year after an incredible game back in December. 2-point win. Tennessee gets it done, moves to the Elite Eight, setting up Clemson versus Tennessee. Two well-rounded teams, but I think Tennessee gets the better of Clemson in this one. Moves on to the Final Four. Lastly, the West, which I think could be absolutely chaotic. You got Florida versus Norfolk State. Florida favored by 28.5. I think Florida wins this one. UConn, Oklahoma. UConn playing better as of late, but the best player on the floor resides with Oklahoma in Jeremiah Fears. But give me UConn in this one to win a game here in the 8-9 matchup. Next up, we got Memphis, Colorado State. And Colorado State is a 12 seed. That is favored by 1.5 in this one. With the Tyrese Hunter injury for Memphis, Michigan State, we know how good Tyrese Hunter is and how big of a difference maker he is. Colorado State is ranked 38th on Bart Torvik and absolutely rolling. Haven't lost since before Valentine's Day. However, PJ Haggerty is still special. I like a close Memphis win in this one. Maryland versus Grand Canyon. I worry about Maryland depth overall in this tournament, but not in this one. Not enough offense for Grand Canyon. 129th in the country in adjusted efficiency offense. So give me Maryland to win this one. Missouri Drake. Everyone is on Drake. Missouri is still favored in this one by about 6.5. Missouri does have the 5th rated offense, and Drake turns it over a bunch. I slight lean Missouri in this one, but I do keep flip-flopping in this one. But I'm going to go with Missouri. Texas Tech, UNC Williamson. Texas Tech, 7th on Torvik currently. Give me Texas Tech in this one. Then this bottom pod of chaos. You first got Kansas versus Arkansas. Storyline is too good to resist in this one. You got Bill Self versus John Calipari. But when you get to the X's and O's, I think Arkansas's defense slows down the offense for Kansas enough. And this is kind of the one pick I'm going with defense in the first round. Everything else, I'm sticking to my theory that I'm kind of sticking with this year. And offense, 3-point shooting, game 1, defense in game 2. This is the one that I'm kind of changing on this one. Just weird Kansas team this year. It seems like all the talent in the world, but this is definitely a big matchup. Could go either way. I think this is a toss-up game. I mean, what is this right now? Kansas by 5.5 favored, but Kansas is not a good free throw shooting team either. So even if this is an offensive type of game, could come down to that in the end. The storyline is also too good to resist, with Arkansas moving on and potentially playing the winner of our next matchup, St. John's, Omaha. Pitino sets up the drama matchup that we're talking about. Gets the win here over Omaha. They're favored by 18.5 currently. We move back up to the top. Florida, UConn. I got the winner of the UConn versus Oklahoma game. No matter who gets out of that game, I got them beating Florida. So that being said, give me UConn to move on. Memphis versus Maryland. This is one where the Tyrese Hunter injury, should he not be available, could hurt Memphis. I'll take Maryland, even though I do worry about their depth in the tournament overall. With the potential of the injury for Memphis, I got Maryland moving on. Missouri, Texas Tech. Tech moves on. I think they're too balanced. Arkansas, St. John's. St. John's, too much defensively, as I said. Defense on the second day of a weekend. Grinded out battle versus 2 of the top defenses overall. Arkansas has a good defense as well, but give me St. John's to move on. UConn, Maryland. UConn gets to an Elite 8 after her horrible year. That's right. I think the depth for Maryland is the issue, even though UConn hasn't had a good year. But as you get deeper in the tournament for Maryland, even though this would be the first game after, heading into the second weekend, they'll have the best player on the floor, Maryland will, and Derek Queen. But I just think not enough depth overall, and UConn heads to an Elite 8. Texas Tech versus St. John's. I like Texas Tech in this one, pulling the upset, the 3-2 slight upset, I guess you could say. UConn versus Texas Tech. I got Texas Tech going to the Final Four. So in the Final Four, I got Michigan State versus Texas Tech. Rematch from 2019, but Michigan State, too deep, too tough defensively. Michigan State gets it done, heads to the national championship game, where they will face the winner of Duke versus Tennessee. Now, should Duke be healthy with Coop? And obviously, I think a lot of this, Duke is talented enough to still make a deep run, but when we get to this point in the season, I think Coop's, health as a team, in all, you can say that for all of these teams. But should Coop be healthy in this one? I think this team is a clear shot at Final Four national championship game. And in a tight one here between Duke and Tennessee, I like Duke to get to the title game here. Now, this setting up Michigan State versus Duke. Izzo, who has struggled his whole career against Duke. Mainly against Coach K. 3-13, he is against them. But did have that Elite 8 win. Obviously 2019, one of the best games in my lifetime in Michigan State history with that team heading to the Final Four. 0-1 against Shire. Definitely some matchup stuff here with Coop, but similar to like the Janai Broom stuff from that potential Elite 8 matchup, Coop go off. Shut the water off of everyone else. Because Coop, Janai Broom, when you're talking about these type of players, he causes those matchup problems with every single team, no matter if, as Michigan State is, one of the best defenses in the country. But the Michigan State guards and wings on Knipple, Proctor, I like to throw multiple bodies at throughout the game. And Tom Izzo, Michigan State gets banner number 2 for Izzo. National championship number 3 for Michigan State. And Tom Izzo last year after the round of 32 exit against North Carolina says, I'm getting back to a deeper run in this tournament or I'm going to die trying. Flash forward 12 and a half months later, raising his second banner of a national championship in the Breslin Center. So that's where we sit out right now. Michigan State over Duke in the national championship. I'm sure this will be busted by about 3 o'clock on Thursday, but that's the fun of it. But we will be here with talking points and videos throughout the whole NCAA tournament. We'll be here with a Michigan State preview for the Bryant first round matchup as well on Friday. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.